we run into this situation as to what can we do, what shouldn't we do. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today, because I think there's some myths out there. There's some misinformation out there that I think is important to address.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
Hey, welcome everybody. I want to start out today by thanking each and every one of our sponsors. Every one of my sponsors have been with me from the very beginning of this show. That means they took a risk before I had even one listener. And I appreciate their loyalty, and I appreciate you as a listener supporting these companies. One of them is Alamode. Alamode is a company I've been using for over 20 years to complete my appraisal process, and you should be too. Reach out to alamode.com or call them at 800-ALAMODE. Also sponsored by DataMaster, which is a company coming out with DataMaster 6, rolling across the country right now. An absolutely amazing product that you need to check out. Go to datamasterfreetrial.com/coach. Once again, it's datamasterfreetrial.com/coach. And finally, OREP Insurance is the E&O insurance that I'm right now in the process of renewing with. And I'm telling you, these folks are so good to work with and so easy. OREP can be found at orep.org. That's orep.org. All right, folks. So there's this issue that as appraisers, we run into on a, I don't know if I want to say frequent, but it's not uncommon basis. And that is, we have done an appraisal for client A, and then down the road, let's say 30 days later, client B comes to us and says, I know you did an appraisal for client A on this particular home, and I want a copy of that appraisal. Well, that's nice that you want that, but unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to provide that for you. And we as appraisers have our ethics laws, USPAP in particularly, our state laws, that keep us pretty confined. I mean, customer service would say, sure, we'd love to give you a copy of that appraisal. Unfortunately, it's not ours to give. We don't own the appraisal. We may have done the appraisal. Yes, we may have a copy of it on our computer. We may have been the appraiser involved in the process from start to finish. It may be our work. But folks, we don't own it. Just like an author might write a book, once he gives that to the publisher and the publisher takes over, he doesn't have the right to just go out and sell that thing wherever he wants to sell it. And that's a situation that we run into on a pretty frequent basis, where a client might come to us and say, hey, we want you to do such and such. And we are confined by what we own, what we have rights to, and our ethics laws. And it's not that we're trying to be hard-nosed, and it's not that we're not trying to have good customer service. It's that we obviously have an obligation to the first client, to the person that owns that appraisal, and we have an obligation to our state board, our state laws. And it puts us in a bit of a bind because we want to be a nice guy, right? We want to be that kind company who's willing to accommodate the needs of our clients and our customers. But obviously, we've got to do the things that we've been tasked to do as those that hold and honor our state licenses. Okay, so that's the problem. So what do we do in this situation? Well, I can tell you that appraisers sometimes make mistakes. They sometimes are a little bit confused as to how this all plays out and what is allowed and what is not allowed. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the myths out there regarding redressing, reassigning, or updating appraisals. Okay, and hopefully I've set this up correctly. We're talking about the situation that you might find yourself in where you've done an appraisal for client A and you now have client B approaching you. Even client A might approach you and say, hey, could you send this to client B, right? maybe a few days, a few weeks, a few months after the fact, or a few years sometimes, right? And we run into this situation as to what can we do, what shouldn't we do. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today, because I think there's some myths out there. There's some misinformation out there that I think is important to address. All right. Let's talk first of all about reassigning. I know that when I was a young buck up and coming in the profession, I did a lot of stupid things. And one of the stupid things that I did, I don't think this has ever changed. I think that the ways that we do appraising has changed, but I don't think the rules surrounding this particular thing. And trust me, I've not done this in the last many years. So statute of limitation is up, folks. I can freely talk about this now. But I would have situations where client A would then say, I'd done an appraisal for client A, and client B would come to me and say, hey, I need a copy of that appraisal. And we would go back to client A and say, hey, can we transfer this to the other company? And they would give our permission, and we would usually get it in writing. And that way we've got that for the work file. Well, folks, that was a big no-no then. That's a big no-no now. You cannot, let me make this very clear. You cannot redress or reassign an appraisal. You cannot, even with written permission from client A, can you transfer an appraisal to client B. USPAP will not allow it. I want to make that very, very clear. The problem we're dealing with here is that when you, quote unquote, reassign to another client, you are actually adding an intended user after the completion of the assignment. You can't do this, folks. You cannot add an intended user after the assignment has been completed. Can you have more than one user in the beginning? Yes, you can. But you cannot add a second or third or fourth user after the report has been completed. So I want to make it very clear. Myth number one, you can reassign an appraisal to another client once that appraisal has been finished and turned in. The answer is that is a myth. That is a no-no. Please don't do it. You can't do it even with written permission from client A. Okay, so we got that one out of the way right now. Let's talk about some of the other things that are potential possibilities. The next option comes up of, what about an update? What about, in the lending world, in the Fannie Mae world, we call that a 1004D. You remember the form. It's a two-part form. The top part is an update. The bottom part is a final inspection. We're talking about the top part right now. And by the way, the purpose of this podcast is to talk about appraisals in general, not necessarily about Fannie Mae forms. We're not talking necessarily just about the final inspection form, the 1004D. Appraisers, don't make the mistake that I see so many of my colleagues making. Don't make yourself look stupid and use a Fannie Mae form for a private deal, okay, and a private appraisal job. Please don't do that. An attorney engages you to do some estate work. You do a divorce appraisal. You do a for sale by owner pre-listing appraisal. Do not use a URAR for that, okay? I, of course, have never done that, ever, except maybe a couple times when I was really young and stupid. Don't do that. It makes you look dumb. A Fannie Mae form is for a Fannie Mae mortgage. Now, is that what we normally use? Yeah, most of us, that's the main bulk of the work that we do. And so it's easy to forget and think, oh, gee, wait, hold on a second. This is a private deal, okay? Likewise, don't do that with an update either. If you've done a job and you've done it for a private source, okay, and you're looking to do a quote-unquote update, you can do that. You can do an update, right? But do not do it on a 1004D. That is a Fannie Mae form. Now, the information that you find in that form is probably very, very similar to what you will put in your addendum or in your report, in your update, but it cannot be the same form. Okay, get that out of the way. The question on the table is thus: can you do an update for client B when you did the appraisal report for client A? The answer is no. You cannot. Here's why. Think through this. For client A, you did an appraisal, and you gave them an appraisal report. Let's just stick with the Fannie Mae forms for a second for brevity. You did an appraisal on a URAR, 1004, and you turned it in, and then a month later, another bank came to you and said, we are now the person doing this loan, and we want to get this thing done, and we want to use your appraisal. Could you please put our name on the product? The answer is I would love to do that, but unfortunately I cannot. Here's why. When you do an update, the update is an appraisal report. Okay? You've essentially said that the value is the same or more than it was when I did the previous report, the previous appraisal. Okay, so you've done an appraisal for client A. And now if you want to turn and do an update for client B, by the way, don't turn off the podcast yet because you can't do that. I'm just giving you a hypothetical that I'm going to destroy in a minute. If you now do an update for client B, you've now essentially given a value as an appraiser on a property. Therefore, you have now completed 2 appraisals. I want to make that very clear. You've completed 2 appraisals. That's why an update is not just clicking a box. When you get an order for an update, folks, and I don't want to get off on fees, but don't charge a minimal amount for that. You've got some work involved. Even if it's just a few days later, you've still got to look at the market. You've still got to look and see what sales have come about since you did the original and see if things really have changed and run some numbers and have something in your work file to back it up, right? When you do an appraisal for client A and then you do an update for client A, okay, let's just stick with A for a second. If you do an appraisal, let's say a 1004 for client A, and then you do an update for client A, you essentially did 2 appraisals for client A, okay? And you have to have the work file to back up your second opinion. And that most likely would include the original appraisal and the original appraisal's work file, because that's where the data came from for the original value. And then you're going to have an extra work file for all of the other information that might have happened, the market changes, the sales that have occurred between the time that you did the original and the update. You are essentially doing 2 appraisals. I want to make that very clear because that's why this is a myth, that you can do an appraisal for client A and then do an update for client B, and that will suffice. You cannot really do an update without referring to the other appraisal and the other appraisal work file. Therefore, how could you do an appraisal update for client B when client A is the owner of the original appraisal? You see the problem that we run ourselves into? So that is another myth. You cannot go to a client who's come to you and asked you to please not charge you for a full appraisal. We need your appraisal, and say, well, I can't really redress it. I can't really reassign it, but I can do an update. No. You cannot. You cannot do an update. That is not a possibility. It is not a possibility. One more time, it is not a possibility. Okay, so here we run into this situation of, well, what do we do? You're a nice guy. You're a nice gal. You don't want to be mean to Mr. Client B. You don't want to say to Mr. Client B, well, sorry, I know it's only been 3 days, but I've got to go out and do a new inspection, and I've got to do a whole new appraisal, even though I'm not going to change any comparables. I've got to do the whole thing from start to finish. Therefore, it's going to be a full fee. Now, I'm not going to tell you what to charge appraisers. If you want to charge a full fee for that, fine. That's fine. Okay. That is an option here. One of the options is you could go out and do a new inspection, therefore a new effective date, therefore new pictures, therefore possibly new information. You can see if the market's changed at all in the last week or however it's been since you did the original appraisal. You can talk about the original appraisal. Again, that's a USPAP requirement. You've got to disclose all previous assignments in the last 3 years. So you're going to disclose that. You're going to do the whole thing, and you're going to charge a full fee because, hey, why not? That is an option. Now, for most of you, that's not an option because you're a business owner and you're a person of integrity and you're thinking, you know what, I've already done a lot of this work. So how, Dustin, how can I do this? How can I do this and remain USPAP compatible? How can I do this and be okay with my state board? How can I do this and be a nice gal or guy appraiser that's willing to work with my clients? I do have an answer. But first, I want to remind you that we are sponsored by a la Mode Software. A la Mode is the company that makes it very easy to do some of the things that we're talking about today. They have all of the forms in their software. They're very easy to get to. You can set up templates so that some of the standard language that you'll use time after time can be in there. They have quick lists. They have the ability to do the side-by-side, the Smart Adjust. Folks, if you don't know what Smart Adjust is, that alone sells me on a la Mode, that and mobile. I'm telling you, folks, if you're not using a la Mode, you need to. You get what you pay for out there, folks. And I'm telling you that a la mode is worth all the investment that you can put into it. And by the way, it's not expensive. Check them out. Go to alamode.com, or you can call them, talk to somebody, ask them questions. It's alamode.com. And we're sponsored, of course, by DataMaster. DataMaster is a company that we've talked about recently on this program. We talked to the CEO, Kevin, and we talked to Jared, and we talked to others there at DataMaster who have told us that DataMaster 6, absolutely incredible program, is rolling out, and it is amazing. You need to be involved in DataMaster 6 if you're not already involved in DataMaster 1, the first version. You need to be, but get ready, folks, because DataMaster 6 is rolling across the country, and it will allow you to do more with less. You talk about working efficiently and being able to do high quality work in a very short period of time. DataMaster will assist you with that goal. Go to datamasterfreetrial.com/coach for your 14-day free trial. Once more, it's datamasterfreetrial.com/coach. Finally, I am in the process right now of renewing my E&O insurance. I'll tell you, I used to dread that process. I don't anymore. I send one email. The application came back. I literally I timed it. I'm a geek. 3 minutes to fill out the application. Basically, it's just, hey, has anything changed in the last year since you renewed before? And now OREP will shop that application around to other companies. I don't necessarily end up with the same company I was with last year. The nice thing about working with a broker is they're going to get you the very best deal possible, and OREP will do that for you. Go to orep.org. Once more, it's OREP, OREP.org. And we're back, folks. We're talking about this problem that we run into as appraisers on a regular basis. And that is that we have a phone call or an email from client B, a client that was not our client in the original, was not an intended user, or a client in the beginning of an appraisal process. Perhaps we've done a URAR 1004 for Bank A, and then a local bank calls us a month later and says, hey, we would love for you to be able to work with us with another client here. So we're asking if you would please transfer that appraisal over. In the past, I think it was much more common in the appraisal world, though it was never okay. It was much more common to get permission from client A and then go ahead and transfer the appraisal over to client B. Folks, that's a no-no. We've already dispelled that rumor. Don't do that. The other quote-unquote loophole that appraisers seem to think is out there is, what about doing an update? So you do an update for client B, kind of reflecting back on client A's report. That's a no-no as well. That's a big no-no. Here's the problem. You have essentially done two appraisals, and your second appraisal, if it's just an update and doesn't have the work file that the original has, and it doesn't have the report that the original has, is kind of a problem because you can't support that value without that original information. Okay, so that's a problem. You can't really do that either. So what do we do? What do we do? Question is, can you do a new assignment? Can you do a new assignment for client B? The answer is yes. Stick with me. Stick with me. Because most of us are going to say, okay, well, yeah, I can do a new assignment for client B, but I don't want to have to charge client B full price. I don't want to have to go back out and do another inspection. Folks, I'll tell you what perpetuated this podcast today. I just got off the phone with one of my mastermind students who has 30 houses, maybe they're condos, 30 appraisals that he has done. And now another client has approached him for the same 30 appraisals. You know, does he want to go out and do 30 new inspections? Does he want to charge the new client for 30 new inspections? And the answer is no, he doesn't. So stick with me. Let me share with you an option that is out there. And I should make it very clear up front. First of all, I am not a USPAP instructor. I am not a lawyer. I'm a schmuck with a microphone. Okay. And that's why I have comments below my episodes. I want you to chime in. I want you to give me your feedback. I want to be taken to the woodshed if I need to be. But I'll tell you, I'm pretty confident on this one. I'm pretty confident. It's not popular, but it's something I think you could do. Looking at USPAP, looking at the confidentiality section of the ethics rule, again, I don't understand this stuff as well as my good friend Tim Anderson does, for example. Diana Jacobs does, some of these others that are out there that are absolutely incredible at what they do. But I think I kind of understand USPAP. And let me state it this way. When you do an appraisal for client B, after you've done it for client A, it is a new assignment, period, end of story. When you change the intended user, when you change the client, you are essentially doing a new assignment, even if it's only been 1 day, okay? You're doing a new assignment. Got to make that very, very clear, all right? But here's an option. Here's an idea that I'll throw out. What if you did a new assignment, you referred to the previous assignment, in other words, you disclosed, because it's in the last 3 years that you've done a previous valuation assignment, you disclose that in your report, okay? But you're essentially doing a new assignment for a new company, a new client. You have a full work file, you have a full report, you've disclosed the prior service, okay? Now, I know some of the questions are coming up. Well, Dustin, wait a second. Does that mean you're going to go back out and do a new inspection? Well, no, not necessarily. You could, if your client requires that. If that's part of your scope of work, you could go out and do a new inspection. But why would you need to? Stick with me. What is the purpose of an inspection? Purpose of an inspection, most likely, is the client wants you to gather information hands-on. The client trusts you as a professional to walk through the home and be careful about making sure that you take notes and pictures and everything else that's required in order to do an assignment. But here's the caveat. USPAP doesn't even require an inspection. Let me repeat that. USPAP does not require an inspection in order to do an appraisal. Why can't you use the information from the previous inspection with the new assignment? Now, I know some of you are jumping up and down screaming, confidentiality, Dustin, confidentiality. Okay, I'm not going to get into confidentiality today because we've addressed it here before. Go back and listen to the previous podcast. But folks, go back to the ethics rule and read the confidentiality section. And I'll just point out a couple of things, okay? Confidential information includes information that is either identified by the client as confidential when providing it to an appraiser that is not available from any other source. Okay, that's key. Or classified as confidential by private or applicable law or regulation. That's it. Folks, we appraisers take confidentiality way too far. The color of your carpet is not confidential. All right? A great man recently reminded me that confidentiality rule is most likely in there because of the information on a commercial appraisal that you would gather, lease contracts, those kinds of things that are very much confidential. That's really why that's in there. Now, USPAP does not clarify that it's only for those things, and so that's where we stretch things, I think. But folks, go back to this statement, okay? I'm reading right out of USPAP. Confidential information is information that is either identified by the client as confidential when providing it to an appraiser and that is not available from any other source, or classified as confidential or private by applicable law or regulation. Now, if you want to cover yourself, maybe a great thing to do if you have this option is to call the homeowner and ask them if they're okay with you revealing the color of their carpet, the condition of their home. Most likely it's them getting the new loan or going through the new process anyway with this new client, right? And they're not going to have a fit if you disclose the color of their carpet or the condition or the quality of the inside of the home that you might not see from the exterior street or from public records. Okay? So here's the idea. Client B comes to you and says, I know you did an appraisal for client A a month ago, but the borrower is now working through us. Can you redress the assignment? No. The answer is no. Can you update the assignment? The answer is no. Can you do a new assignment? The answer is yes. Okay, I can do a new assignment. Do you need to go back out and see the property? Well, that's up to you, Mr. Client. Do you need a new walkthrough date, a new date of inspection? Remember, effective date does not have to be the walkthrough date. The inspection date does not have to be the effective date. Now, for a Fannie Mae Form, typically is, but USPAP doesn't say the effective date has to be the date you walk through the property. Now, one of the things you can do is to do a full new assignment and talk about the previous assignment, because you have to disclose the previous assignment, right? But use the information that you obtained on site to be able to do new value. You can update the effective date. You can do a retroactive effective date. You can do the date as of a month, 2 months, 3 months, last week, yesterday. It can be a retrospective appraisal as well, if you want the inspection date to match the effective date. Okay? Something to think about next time client B calls you. There are things that we can do. Now, I want to make it very clear as we close up today that these are my opinions. I am certainly welcome or would welcome comments that would take me to the woodshed, that would school me. I'm always learning. But I think this is okay. I really do. I think this is a doable situation. And I think it's a win-win because you solve the problem that client B has. You solve your problem of wanting to provide great customer service and not have to maybe necessarily charge a full appraisal fee for something you've done a lot of the work on already. Appraisers, think outside the box. Think about the things that you've done in the past. Think about the things you're doing now. Think about the things that you can do in the future. I want to be very clear. You need to remain USPAP compliant. You need to do things right. You need to do things with ethics and with standards and with morals and obey those laws, folks. Don't get yourself in trouble. Don't get yourself in trouble. But I think there's ways to do things and remain compatible with all of those things that I previously mentioned. This is one of those. And it's one of those that I think can be a benefit to those that we serve. Thank you for joining me, folks, and we'll catch you next time.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
Sorry, editor, I had a message come in here. Give me a second. Actually, let me finish that sentence before I screw it up.